Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the quiet heart of Maplewood, a town nestled between dense woods and placid lakes, a murmur of unease rippled through the streets. What had once been a serene community was now burdened with an ominous event. On an early autumn morning, the sun struggled to pierce through a thick blanket of fog that clung to the trees, rendering everything muted and mysterious. Mary Ellen Ross, a friendly librarian known for her warm smile and penchant for local history, had not arrived at work as scheduled. This absence was unlike her. She was punctual, dependable. By noon, whispers began to circulate among her colleagues and patrons alike. Concern morphed into frantic worry as phone calls went unanswered. By late afternoon, her colleagues decided to check on her. The library was dimly lit, with shadows dancing over shelves full of neglected novels. Upon arriving at her small brick home, they found the front door slightly ajar. They hesitated for a moment, the heavy atmosphere pressing down on them, before pushing the door open. What lay in the living room shocked them. The scent of something acrid and metallic hung in the air. Books were scattered, their pages fluttering as if caught in an unseen wind. It soon became painfully clear that Mary Ellen was gone. Paramedics and police flooded the scene while the sky deepened to an inky gray, a calm disrupted by the electric tension of uncertainty. In that fleeting moment, Maplewood's tranquility was broken. The whispers that once filled the library with laughter were now replaced by hushed tones of disbelief. As an innocent town prepared for a darkness it could scarcely comprehend. The victim. Mary Ellen Ross was a woman of routine. Every morning she would rise before dawn, brew a pot of her favorite hazelnut coffee, and spend a few quiet moments enjoying the early, chirruping chorus of nature. She had only recently married, having wed Jacob Ross just 6 months prior. Yet her life was not defined by newlywed bliss. Instead, she was deeply entrenched in her work at the Maplewood Library, which she often described as her sanctuary from a world that felt increasingly chaotic. Her colleagues knew her as someone who possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of local lore and history, often delighting them with tales of the town's founding and secrets long buried. Mary Ellen was the type of person who remembered birthdays and would leave small tokens of appreciation on desks. Each night, she meticulously organized her shelves, a ritual that seemed to ease the worries of the day. The following days after her disappearance revealed an unsettling truth about Mary Ellen's life. She had faced bullying in her youth, filling her with a lifelong skepticism towards others' intention. But her passion for her work allowed her to form strong connections, albeit cautiously. The rumor mill churned with stories: a recent argument with a patron, a strange encounter in the parking lot, each tale plotted lines in the larger narrative of her complex existence. As investigators sifted through her life, they unearthed a trove of notebooks filled with her thoughts, doodles, and snippets of poetry. It became evident that while she maintained a facade of serenity, her inner world was one of depth and vulnerability, marked by a longing for acceptance and peace amid silent battles that few could understand. The crime scene. When the police arrived at Mary Ellen's residence, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The report of her mysterious absence had already instilled a sense of dread in the community, and the discovery of the open door only deepened the collective anxiety. Officers carefully pushed through the doorway, the hinges creaking in the silence, revealing a scene that would haunt many lives. The living room was in disarray. Books lay strewn across the floor, many open to pages filled with Mary Ellen's neat handwriting. It was as if her intellectual world had been violently disrupted. The late afternoon light barely penetrated the haze inside, casting long shadows that danced ominously on the walls. A coffee mug, still warm to the touch, sat abandoned on the coffee table alongside a half-read novel. Moving deeper into the home, the officers noted signs of struggle. A decorative lamp lay shattered on the floor, its light bulb flickering helplessly. Distant echoes of Mary Ellen's laughter seemed trapped within the battered objects around them. The subtext of the mess was unmistakable. Something had gone terribly wrong. Detective Sarah Mitchell, who had seen more than her share of crime scenes through the years, felt an unsettling pit in her stomach, a premonition that today would not yield easy answers. As the forensic team moved methodically, dusting and documenting, she felt the weight of unseen consequences pressing down. This wasn't just about identifying a crime, it was about unraveling a life that had touched many hearts. The investigation would soon reveal the delicate web of relationships in Maplewood, painting a picture of a woman admired and cherished, as well as revealing those who might harbor darker intentions. It was only the beginning, but as the cool evening settled over the house, a chill crawled up Mitchell's spine. The early investigation. Detective Sarah Mitchell assembled her team in the dim light of the precinct, the tension palpable in the cramped room. Each investigator looked to her for direction, recognizing the significance of the case before them. Mary Ellen Ross was not just a missing person, she was a beloved member of the Maplewood community. The swirling rumors had reached their ears, and the atmosphere buzzed with urgency. The first step in their investigation involved interviewing close friends and family. Sarah and her partner, Detective Omar Ruiz, visited Jacob Ross, Mary Ellen's husband, an anxious man in his early 30s. He paced the small living room, running a hand through his disheveled hair. A stack of unwashed dishes cluttered the sink behind him, a reflection of the chaos that had consumed his life in recent days. Mary would never just leave, he insisted, his voice cracking with agitation. We had plans for the weekend. She was excited about a book festival. His eyes darted, flicking towards framed photographs on the walls filled with memories of happier times. As they probed deeper, they uncovered more about Mary Ellen's life, weaving together threads of her relationships. Not long after, they interviewed her colleagues at the library. Among the group, a fellow librarian, Lisa, appeared particularly shaken. Desperate to help, she shared a disturbing encounter she had witnessed: a tense argument between Mary and a patron who had been banned from the library for inappropriate behavior weeks prior. His name was Daryl, Lisa whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. He was obsessed with her. I felt cornered. She felt cornered. That was the first name that would surface as a potential lead. And as Sarah listened, she felt the weight of responsibility deepen. With each new piece of information, the case grew more intricate, shifting from an unsettling disappearance into something even darker. It wouldn't be long before Maplewood would learn that not all shadows offered solace in the daylight. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Mary Ellen intensified. But there were few leads to grasp. Detective Sarah Mitchell felt the urgency in the air, a cloud of frustration hanging over the precinct. Each day, team meetings seemed to yield more dead ends than progress. The town had rallied to aid in the search, but as every lead fizzled out, hope began to dwindle. They followed leads of anonymous tip strangers claiming to have seen Mary with someone in a cafe or park, but each sighting turned out to be a mirage, a projection of the townsfolk's fears. For every promising piece of information, there was a string of false hope that left them more disillusioned. The walls of the precinct echoed with noise as officers pored over canvassed areas, interviews, and evidence logs, each discarded paper creating a mountain of frustration. Darrell, the patron from the library, had initially appeared to be a strong suspect, but his alibi was rock solid. He had been out of town at the time of her disappearance, leaving no trace on the investigation's radar. Although he was placid during questioning, Sarah could sense something haunting in his demeanor, perhaps a guilty conscience, or maybe just the feeling of being wrongfully accused. A tip came in from a local barista mentioning a couple that saw Mary at the local diner shortly before her disappearance. They were tracked down, only to reveal a mundane encounter that provided no substantial leads and left an empty feeling of circularity. As the days bled into nights, with Mary still missing, the pressure mounted the weight of the town's fears, now heavy on Sarah's shoulders. In the midst of darkening thoughts, moments of self-doubt crept in. Had they missed something vital? The deeper they dug, the more convoluted the narrative became. And just when they thought there was light at the end of the tunnel, it seemed to fade once again. A break in the case. Just when the investigation seemed to stall in a suffocating cycle of frustration and dead ends, a breakthrough arrived, unexpectedly one rainy afternoon. Detective Sarah Mitchell sat at her desk, the sound of raindrops tapping against the window providing a somber rhythm to her thoughts. Distant murmurs from her team permeated the air, but her focus was shattered by the shrill tone of her phone. It was Officer Greg Phelps, breathless and urgent. "Sarah, you need to come down to the diner. One of the waitresses has something important." Heart racing, Sarah quickly gathered her notes and stepped out into the dreary weather. The diner, normally bustling with life, was quieter than usual, the rain forcing patrons inside to huddle together in small, cautious groups. Monica, the waitress, sat nervously at a booth in the corner, her hands wringing together under the table. "I saw her," she breathed, her voice barely audible over the crackling sound of the radio. "Mary? Just a few days before she'll know." Reliving that moment seemed to shake her, as she recalled how Mary Ellen had been at the diner with a man. His demeanor, she recalled, was unsettling, the way his eyes darted around the room, as if he were double-checking for unwanted witnesses. The details were fuzzy but crucial. They had exchanged hushed words, too quiet for anyone nearby to overhear. Determined, Sarah pressed for more details, optimistic that they might finally have a semblance of direction. "Do you remember what he looked like?" Monica nodded, her eyes at once wide with fear. "He had dark hair and kind of a scruffy look. I thought he seemed familiar, but I couldn't place him." With a fresh lead to pursue, Sarah left the diner electrified with renewed purpose. The rain beat down as she navigated back to the precinct, feeling an urgent fire igniting within her. The murky shadows of the case began to shy away, revealing a potential path through the darkness that had clouded the investigation for far too long. The suspect. With renewed determination coursing through her, Detective Sarah Mitchell returned to the precinct, where the scent of stale coffee permeated the air. She convened the team quickly, detailing the new information gathered from the diner. Eyes lit with intrigue, they began to scour the records for anyone matching the waitress's description: dark hair, unkempt appearance. After hours of pitting together timelines and surveillance footage captured in and around the diner, they identified a name: Nathaniel Nate Hawkins. He was known for his erratic behavior and had a criminal record that included incidents of harassment. Most recently, he had been evicted from his apartment, leaving him with nowhere to go. With the name in hand, the detectives prepared for a visit to a local halfway house where he was known to have stayed. Nate was surprisingly cooperative when they arrived, a scruffy figure emerging from the shadows of the parking lot. He fumbled with a cigarette pack and claimed he hadn't seen Mary Ellen, though his nervousness was palpable. Sarah's intuition warned her that there was more to uncover beneath his nonchalant facade. In their interrogation, Nate's story faltered, details erasing themselves like footprints in the sand. He acknowledged being at the diner, but when pressed, his eyes darted. He referred to Mary as just some girl, yet his body language screamed of something more ominous. Detectives could feel the tension. There was an undercurrent of deceit that wrapped around his words like smoke. "Did you argue with her?" Zara asked directly, her gaze unwavering. Nate's mouth twitched in what could only be described as a flicker of guilt. "No. I mean, we talked, but that's it." His voice knocked against the walls of the small interrogation room, uncertain and swift. The detectives exchanged knowing glances. There was something sinister lurking beneath his words. They began to piece together the puzzling fragments of Nate's life-recent interactions with Mary, his unstable history, and a possible obsession that bred danger. As they left the interrogation room, Sarah felt the weight of realization. They may have found not just a lead, but the first key to unlocking the mystery that had gripped Maplewood in fear. The trial. Months passed following the harrowing discoveries that led to the arrest of Nathaniel Hawkins. The town of Maplewood found itself engulfed in a cloud of anticipation and dread as the trial date loomed closer. What was once a close-knit community now felt frayed and anxious, grappling with the haunting specter of Mary Ellen's absence. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension as Sarah Mitchell took her seat in the gallery, surrounded by a mixture of family members, reporters, and townspeople starving for answers. The whispers grew louder with each passing moment, a constant hum like the murmur of restless waters. Nathaniel entered, flanked by officers, his demeanor strangely calm, almost detached. As the trial progressed, the prosecution laid bare the evidence against him: witness accounts, video footage from the diner, and the chilling testimony of Sarah as she recounted the events surrounding Mary Ellen's disappearance. The details felt heavy, the weight of grief palpable among those present. But amid the emotional turmoil, Nathaniel's defense team fought tooth and nail, portraying him as a misunderstood individual, a product of circumstances. As the hours turned into days, the prosecution's case grew stronger. Key witnesses testified. One brought forth a surveillance video depicting Nate's interactions with Mary at the diner. He had indeed been fixated on her, raising red flags in the eyes of those watching. The footage emerged as an undeniable piece of the puzzle, sending ripples of shock through the room. Moments turned into a blur as Sarah felt the surge of emotions from every corner of the gallery. The heart-wrenching absence of Mary Ellen loomed over them all, particularly in the poignant moments when her family spoke of her kindness, her laughter, and the void her absence left. After days of prosecution and defense resting their cases, the jury retreated to deliberate. As the courtroom awaited their verdict, Sarah couldn't shake the feelings of hope and fear. There was still a part of her that longed for justice, not just for Mary, but for the town searching for closure. On that fateful day, when the jury finally returned, the tension was almost unbearable. As the foreperson read the verdict guilty on all counts, the emotional tide surged through the courtroom. Relief mixed with sorrow, a bittersweet moment for a community that had come together in agony, knowing they would never truly return to the innocence of the past. The aftermath. In the weeks following Nathaniel Hawkins' conviction, the town of Maplewood grappled with a heavy sense of both relief and disruption. The echo of the trial still hung in the air, a testament to the scars left behind in a community that was once so unyielding. With Hawkins behind bars, many felt a semblance of security had returned. But the emptiness felt in the wake of Mary Ellen Ross' disappearance left an unshakable void. Memorials sprang up unexpectedly across Maplewood, flowers, candles, and handwritten notes adorning parks, streets, and the front of the library, where Mary had devoted so many years of her life. The town, once vibrant with laughter and camaraderie, now wore its grief like a heavy cloak, shuffling along with a lingering unease. Detective Sarah Mitchell found herself reflecting on the case more than she liked. Moments of regret tugged at her heart. Could she have done something differently? Despite the successful outcome of the trial, the questions that lingered were haunting. In her quieter moments, she wandered the familiar streets, now tinged with solemnity. Every face she passed seemed to carry the weight of what had happened, and her role as the shepherdess to their fears weighed heavily. Life in Maplewood gradually shifted as it adapted to the absence of one of its own. The library reopened, but the silence was deafening. The staff, though determined to honor Mary's legacy, found it impossible to escape the shadow she had cast. A committee formed to preserve her memory, envisioning events that could celebrate her love for literature and community. Yet each planning session echoed with her absence. As the seasons changed, hugging the town in hues of gold and crimson, it became clear that healing would take time. Residents reconnected with one another, sharing their vulnerabilities, and slowly, the shared trauma began to forge deeper bonds among them. Each whispered memory of Mary Ellen served as both a reminder of loss and a rallying call for the community to come together, to not forget, and instead find ways to build something lasting. As Sarah stood in front of the library one last time, feeling the gentle breeze brush against her skin, she hoped to remember this moment as a turning point. Though she carried the burden of the past and the haunting face of Mary in her mind, she stepped forward with the knowledge that Maplewood would find its way, gradually reclaiming its spirit amid the scars. The journey of healing had begun, one small step at a time. Reflection. As the final chill of autumn descended over Maplewood, Detective Sarah Mitchell found herself drawn to the library once more. The wooden doors, stained with age but polished to a shine, stood as a reminder of the enduring community spirit that had survived the storm of grief. Today, she wasn't just here for work. She was here to remember. The library was bathed in golden light, the familiar scent of old books filling her senses. She strolled through the aisles where Mary Ellen had spent countless hours sharing the magic of storytelling with children and adults alike. It dawned on Sarah that Mary's influence lingered, not only in the stories she loved, but in the lives she had touched through kindness and knowledge. Collecting her thoughts, Sarah found solace in the understanding that true healing often comes in waves. While the wound of loss was still fresh, the town had begun to bond over sorrow, a reminder that sharing grief could weave women, men, and children closer together. The echoes of shared laughter resonated through the bookshelves, infusing life into Mary's legacy. As she prepared to leave, Sarah took a moment to gaze out the window at the vibrant hues of the changing leaves. They were beautifully fleeting, reminding her of life's fragile nature. And she resolved to embrace each day with gratitude and purpose. Indeed, the struggle would continue, but Maplewood had begun to turn its heartache into resilience. There was beauty in their shared grief, and as it blossomed into hope, Sarah knew they would never forget Mary.